Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and welcome to the AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp as we continue on from our last implementation. Just so you know, I recorded a 3-hour video of the next implementation, but I ended up recording my entirely wrong screen. OBS decided that it would default to a different screen, and I had not noticed. So I have to start over, and so that's bad for me. But the good news for you is you don't have to sit through 3 hours of video because we can get through it a lot faster. Though we do lose all that fun work of doing things or setting things up from scratch and that contextual knowledge. But that's okay. We always replace it with new additional knowledge and push stuff further. So what I had to do was preserve my old stuff because we want to carry this stuff over. And so what I've done is I've made a branch called week 8 again missing, and in here, if you go to the commits, there's one called WIP. Now I apologize for the name. I almost lost these changes because Gitpod was not allowing me to push code after we're relaunching a workspace. I actually had to open a ticket up on the Gitpod Discord being like, hey, I'm having this problem. And then I found out that I had to have this thing checkboxed in my permissions. Why I never had this problem before, I don't know. But if you're having issues pushing to Gitpod after relaunching a workspace, make sure this repo one is checkboxed. I gave it that as well. And then you're able to push. But at the time, that's the message I wrote because I was worried I was going to lose this code. But the point is, the code is here. And so we'll use this as a reference point and bring over the code. I'll talk through it. But yeah, it saves us hours because I was writing these from scratch, right? So I was coming up with that implementation and figuring out on the spot. And so at least you don't have to spend all this time writing all this stuff, okay? So what we'll do is we'll make sure we are launched up. I can't exactly remember the last state of the application. I believe we were working on the pop-up for the form, so that was yet to be implemented. So let's go over here and take a look at what I have here. So we've been making a lot of changes here. And so, there is the form pop-up that we were working on, but there were some other things that we were doing that was making things a bit easier. So one thing is I found out we had that -u flag. I was trying to do the unbuffering. And so it was something that was driving me crazy. The fact that we always had to insert a print line in order to see our contents printed out. So like when you did something in Flask, you could never see that stuff immediately. And so I researched this and I put this flag here and it errored out saying like you can't put it here, even though it's part of Python 3. And so with more research, what I found out was that we just need to set this environment variable. So Python by default buffers their outputs or whatever. And so by turning this off, the way you do it is you set it to 1, give this any value, and it will no longer buffer. It'll just send it straight out to the terminal, and that'll make our debugging a lot easier. So, just place that in your Docker file. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. We'll go over to Backend Flask, Docker file, and we can paste this in anywhere, and that will make our lives so much easier. Like, it is such a big difference. So I'm going to go here and just go ahead and make sure that make sure to print our stuff out when we want it to print for Flask in development. Okay, and we're not adding that to our production one because, this is for development. We don't care about prints if they're buffered or not. I mean, we might, but I don't think that it matters to us in production, so we'll leave that out. So there's that. We need a way to implement that update profile endpoint, so that's something that we will want to implement. So maybe we had yet to do that. Yeah, so this hello there was there so that we were just testing that, so that's doesn't matter. So let's go take a look at our code, and maybe we'll just start up the application. That's going to help, but I just want to put that one line in before we start up that application, and we'll do a Docker compose up. Okay, so we'll let that spin up there. And the reason that's happening is because I need to log in. So this is something that I was trying to find a place where to put these scripts so there's an automated way, but I haven't figured anything out for that yet. So we'll go back over here, just the top here. I'm just trying to get to the top directory here. So we'll do bin ECR login, and we'll hit enter. And so that will log us in. And your password will be stored unencrypted. Oh, that sounds great. And we will go ahead and do a Docker compose up. Because if we're not logged in, it can't pull the images from ECR. Now, just talking out loud, I saw for the last week that people were implementing a Fargate, but for the front end, they were using static website hosting. That's not something we've done yet, or it might not be something we do in the scope of this project. So just consider if you are going off the beaten path and doing something different, make sure you put in your journal so that if your work is being checked over, we'll know for sure. But anyway, we're still having issues with this starting up, which is a bit funny. But what I'll do is I'll just, because I don't trust this here, I'm going to go here and we are logged in, right? Yeah, login succeeded. So we'll just try this one more time. The problem is it might not know the context this is in, so it might still be complaining. Oh, here it says backend flask env, no such file or directory. So the thing is that we have those environment variables that we use. They're here. And these are supposed to generate them out when they run them. For some reason, they didn't generate them out. So let's go take a look here and go to Flask. And I'll scroll up and it should here show us something. So what it's saying here is generate env. It says require command not found, template command not found, unexpected syntax for this on line 6. So why aren't these generating out? Because they definitely do work if we run them individually. So I'm not really sure why they're not working there. I kind of want that stuff to generate out because it's less of a headache if we do that. I also want to be logged into ECR when we get into our machine, so that might be something else we want to do here. So do we have one that's like for Docker Compose? Not really, but what I'll do here is I'll just go and make another one here and say Docker. And then maybe we can execute our login, because it would be really annoying if we have to keep typing those in. I really am sick of doing that. So up here, I ran this. And so I was expecting this to execute it, and it didn't. But what if we just take that out? Because this might also work. A boot camper told me we didn't even need the source. It would just still run and execute correctly. So maybe that would be it for resolving it for us. And so here I have bin ECR login. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we'll say attempt to set up scripts on launch, such as logging into ECR and generating .env files. Okay, because that will save us a lot of time if that is fixed. So yeah, what we'll do here is I'm going to stop this workplace. I'll open the context so I can quickly get back to it. I'm going to stop this workplace. And then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to launch Gitpod again. And I want to observe that those things are generating those things out so that I don't have to deal with that. So we'll be back here in a second. All right, let's see if it worked. So here it says AWS command not found, cannot perform an interactive login from a non-TTY device. So it is seeming that it's having some trouble here. Why it's saying the AWS command is not found is confusing to me. So there's something that I simply don't understand about Gitpod YAML that it's doing. Why can't it launch these here? I guess the other thing is like these are, well, it should be running it, but what could we do here to fix it? I don't know. I'll be back in a second. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what we can do about that. So basically what I'm going to do is comment it out. If somebody knows the solution to that, I would love to know it. But for the time being, these are just going to cause errors, and that is useless to us. So I really don't know what the solution is for that. But I would like to streamline it so that I don't have to keep typing the same thing over and over again. I did try to create a bin script called setup here before. It did fail when I tried to do that, or I called it bootstrap here. And so we were trying to do it for the database. I suppose we could just change it over and see if we can make it work for ECR, because if it's not going to work for that, maybe it can work for this. So we'll do backend Flask. Front end, it's just backend, front end. I'm going to say generate env. And let me go generate env. Because at least that would be a little bit nicer if we could do that, at least. Bootstrap. Okay, and it generated those two files. So, well, we gave our Bootstrap new life there. So we'll just say change Bootstrap to login to ECR and to generate out env files. Okay, it's not perfect, but we'll work with what we got. Okay, so so the next thing is we want to launch up Docker Compose. So we'll say compose up. And now it should work. So we'll let it download, and I'll see you back here when it's running, okay? Actually, while that's starting, I'm going to just attempt to make a new script called prepare and see if we can do what we wanted Bootstrap to originally do. So I can just go ahead and copy this and put this into prepare. And there are a few things we want to run. So I'm just going to go up here and do a chmod u plus x on that directory there, prepare. And so we want everything that happens in setup. So what I'm going to do is go over to the database into setup here. And we want all of these things to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. And I'm going to just paste these in here. We don't need to drop the database, so we'll take that out. But the clear difference here will be, whoops, did not ask it to do that. I'm not sure why it opened up. Oh, because the app might be running now. So that's great. Backend's not, but we'll find out here in a second why that is. But anyway, we have create, schema load, seed, update the database. We want these to be the DB path. So I'm just going to go here and say DB path equals double quotation, and we'll say bin path. And then I'll just say DB on the end there. So then those go to the DB path. We also want to load DDB. So I'm going to just do this and say DDB, DynamoDB database. I think that's correct. Yep. And from there, we want to run a couple things. So we want to run schema load. I believe these are Python files, so I'll double check there in a second what they are. And we'll do seed. So if we open up schema load for DDB, yeah, that's a Python file. And the other one is a Python file. So this hopefully will be a lot easier than what we were doing before, but we have to figure out why the backend is not working. There's always reasons for things not working, so we'll go take a look. I probably have some leftover code that we need to remove. Let's go check the view logs here and see what it complains about. And we'll go open that up there, and we'll go into backend Flask. No module named -u. So we got rid of that flag. Maybe we didn't actually. Maybe we forgot to do that. So let's open up our Docker file for our backend Flask. And over here, we still have that flag in there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Hopefully, it's going to rebuild the image with that flag removed. So we'll go back and we'll say Docker compose down. And it will down everything. I'll hit escape. And then we'll go ahead and do Docker compose up. And so we'll just wait for that to rebuild, okay? All right, so it seems to be running now. Let's go take a look and see if the backend is running. It is, so we are in good shape here for this to work. We do need to prepare our database, something that we'll only have to run once when we log in and hopefully not tweak it too much, but we'll go here and run the prepare script. So it's db create no such file or directory. Well, it's supposed to bring in the bin path, so I'm not sure why that's complaining. We'll just do a print on this and say db path and see what it does here. Or it's echo. I'm writing print. And it's actually printf, but I'm going to do echo, which is fine. We'll hit up again. And so this is printing out line 13. It's complaining. Let's just take that out like that. Is that better? Yes, it's just doing /db. Why? We asked for the absolute path here. So what's going on here? We'll say abs path here. And so that gives me a full path here. And then we will print out bin path. Oh, it's not bin path, it's bin dir. Okay, well, I'm going to just change it over to path, and that will resolve that issue. So I'm surprised that was like that, but that should resolve our issue. Maybe that's why it wasn't working before. And so now it's probably printing properly, but here it says no such file or directory workspace backend db schema SQL. Well, that has to be a lie because the backend has that, right? db schema SQL. It's right here. Oh, but it's supposed to be with the actual workspace name. So the workspace name is missing here for some reason. It's supposed to say this. So let's go ahead and print out our path then, I guess. Again, echo db path. Maybe something weird is going on here. I'll just do this so I can see what's going on. Anything like this. There we go. We'll hit up. We'll prepare. And so we have workspace, AWS Bootcamp Crutter 2023 bin db. So that is printing out the correct path now. But the question is why is this script not loading the correct schema? So maybe there's something wrong with our bin script for its, maybe it's not, maybe it's like relative or absolute. There's something weird going on there. So maybe that's something we can adjust, and then we'll get this prepare script, which is really nice. So to do that, we need to go into our schema load file for DDB. So I'll just do that, schema load. And it's trying to find, oh, sorry, that's for the database. db dot schema load here for the database. And so here, it's saying this directory doesn't exist. So here we have the project path. So I'm just going to echo out some of these things like abs path, db path, bin path, project path. Right, so, and we can even go further here. Saying the database already exists, so I'm just gonna run this here, bin db drop, there we go. And should want all of these, even the backend Flask path. And so this is the schema load file. So somewhere along here, something's getting distorted, right? So I'm just gonna go here and make sure this is very clear. So we know what that is. And I'm gonna run that again, so prepare. Well, we dropped the database though, so that's okay. Maybe it didn't let us drop it. Oh, because it's being used by other sessions. So we'll just do docker compose down. What a pain. I guess we could have killed all sessions. That probably would have been easier instead of doing it down, but too late. We'll go back and do an up. I'll be back here in a second, okay? All right, so this is running again. Let's go take a look here and open up our port 3000. Oh, right. We're doing this to prepare our database. Our database is not prepared, and so we needed to do a down and then an up. So let's go ahead and try that. So we will try to prepare. Wait a second. Wasn't I supposed to like get rid of the connections and not launch it? No. Whatever, let's just try it anyway. Already exists. Okay, we'll drop it, and hopefully this works this time around. Yep, okay, we'll do a kill all on this. And we killed those connections. We will now drop it. We will go ahead and do a prepare. And so now we can print it out and see what's going on here. So we can see we have it here, and then we have it on the bin, but then we go forward, but then we add backend Flask, so that doesn't make sense. And then we go workspace backend Flask db schema SQL. So there is a problem with our schema load, though it doesn't seem to break in other places. So like if I was to run this manually here, we said bin db schema load. Now the pathing is correct. That's interesting. So here, what's the difference? Oh, it's because this is relative to wherever we are. I see. So even though we're executing this, it thinks that we're here, and that's why it's messing up. And so that's why these subscripts mess up. The reason the other ones work is that they're in the same directory structure, like the same level of depth, whereas this one is one level up. And so that would mess up the pathing, and that totally makes sense. Okay. Well, that sucks because that means that we would have to put our prepare in the same directory structure for it to work. But the backend and front end ones generated no problem, so that's kind of interesting. So I'm not exactly sure what we should do to work around that. Really what we want to know is if it's at this level here. Oh boy. Should I even bother fixing this? No. So we have another script that doesn't work right now. So for the time being, we're just gonna have to again manually run it. At least our prepare works, so that's just something we'll solve later. I just don't want to spend so much time going down this rabbit hole here. So we'll just run these manually, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna drop this here, and then I just write run setup. Okay. And then we'll just go do the other ones, db schema. But at some point we will fix that and make it a little bit easier when I am not so sick and tired. Okay, so we'll seed our data. We are now in better shape. We'll go back over to our application and we'll just check the log, see how it's doing. We don't see any data, but we did muck with the connections. So I'm gonna go again and do a Docker compose down. Great, let's close that out. And I'll do a Docker compose up. I'll see you back here in a second. All right, so it's back up here. We were gonna see if the app is working. Okay, so our app is back in a working state. I'm gonna go sign in so we can actually do some stuff. And then we are going to start copying, pasting code and talking through it. Okay, so if we go to profile, this is what we're working on. This is what we did last, and the edit button doesn't work. So that's what we're doing. We're implementing that edit button and having that pop-up form and stuff like that. So I got a lot of code here, and this is gonna be fun. So the first thing is, did we do the absolute imports? So this is something I found out, which is I was trying to rearrange the CSS, and then I decided not to do that because that was a mistake. But this absolute thing is really nice because then we can simplify our components and have more flexibility if we want to reorganize them later. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So what I want you to do is go into your front-end React.js directory, and we'll go back over here, and we need to have this js config.json. So go ahead and create that. And so I'm familiar with this for TypeScript. I didn't realize there was one for JS config JSON, but the idea is that we will set the explicit includes here, so that way that anything in the source directory will now be at the, like, you can reference it at the root level. So what I mean by that is if we go over to anything, let's say we go into our pages and we go into our home page here, we can take this and now just do this. Okay? And so basically we can, like by having that, it's super powerful because now we can move our files around anywhere and they're always have these absolute imports. So I really like that. Doesn't work for CSS per se, or if it does, I'm not exactly sure on how to work with that. So that's what I wanted it for. I just didn't research it. So that will make our lives a lot easier. So I'm gonna go back over here and let's see what else we wanna do. Well, let's just make sure that works. So this was on the homepage feed. We'll give this a refresh and just make sure we're not getting any errors. We are, because we probably will have to restart the application. See, it's saying it can't find it on the homepage there because we did make like a fundamental change. So what we'll do is go back here and we will compose down and we will compose up and we'll see if it actually is working, okay? I'll see you back in a moment. All right, so our application is back up. We'll give it a refresh and we'll see that that works now. So yeah, now we have a lot more flexibility for moving around our components. Let's take a look at what else we're doing here. So we do need to implement the backend endpoint, but for the most part, we need to get up the CSS and stuff like that. So let's go take a look at the edit component. In the edit component, nothing happening here. I just put a pop on there, so I'm just going to double check to make sure that is the same. So we'll go ahead and look at edit profile. So yeah, that will pop up when we click that button. And so right now when we click it, nothing's here, probably because we don't have a form. So let's go take a look at where we're actually rendering this form. This form gets rendered in the user feed profile, I believe, or page.js. And so somewhere in here, we are expecting to be importing that. We are not importing that, so we'll go down below. Another thing is that I ended up refactoring out the activities feed because inside of it, it has, oh, we already did that. That was already what we did before. But I guess my point is we're missing the profile form, so the thing that actually has to pop up. So what I'll do is I'll go back over here and we will look for the profile form, which is here, and we'll go ahead and grab all this code. Imagine spending hours with me writing that. Either you'd like that or you wouldn't. Again, it's the Cloud Bootcamp, not like a front-end, back-end bootcamp, so maybe that's something I would do in another one where I'd build it all from scratch. And I mean, I built it from scratch. I just mean together as we're working through it. So profile form is going to be under components. So we'll go here under to components, and we'll say profile form JS. Okay, and then we'll paste the contents in there. We'll take a look at what's going on. So we have this form, and we know that we want to be able to update the bio and the display name. Of course, the banner and the avatar, that will come later. We're using this use effect, so the idea is that we'll pass in the profile, which we get from our endpoint. And so anytime that data is changed, it will then propagate. It will say update this stuff, and it'll set the bio and display name here. On submit, we are going to submit it to a new endpoint called API profile update. We'll have to create that endpoint. We're obviously passing our access token because this has to be authorized. We pass them along here. If we close the form, or sorry, if once we've submitted, we'll just set the bio display name and close it. We're not doing error handling at this point. We should do it at some point. We are going to have two fields here. So we have our display name and our bio. We're wrapping these in divs so that we have a bit more flexibility. We added labels, which we have not been doing prior with our forms, but in this case, we definitely need it. So that's that. Let's bring in the profile form CSS file. So say profile form CSS. And we'll go over there and grab that code. So we'll go here on the left-hand side, profile form CSS, and we'll grab that. And we'll paste it in. And I had written all this from scratch with you, and you'll never see it. So, so we are bringing in the styling for the text field and the input, padding around the pop-up content, which makes sense. A margin between the display name and the bottom, so there's a space for the display name and the bio. And then we have our submit button there. Okay, so that is good. So those two things are there. I don't know if it would work at this point, but let's go give it a try and see what happens for fun. We hit edit profile, and let's bring this down here. Well, we didn't actually import it. So if we go back over to our user feed page, we need to import that. So we'll go to the top here. I'm just going to grab it so that we're just a little bit more consistent with our implementation. Yeah, see, I changed all those over as well. Looks like, yeah, check auth is fine. Yeah, so really we're just bringing in this component here. So go down below, and this is probably right after the activity form that we placed it. Yep, so we have profile, popped profile, set profile, popped. Okay, so that makes sense. We'll go give this a refresh. And we have an error. That's totally fine because we didn't actually add the import statement. So I'll go here and we'll just say profile form. And we'll just say profile form. And we'll refresh that. Okay, getting a little bit better. We have an issue with Z indexing. We never set any Z indexing on those pop-ups. So the pop-up logic is actually right now in the reply. Whoops, did not mean to do that. The reply form CSS. So we had it here to begin with. And so that's because when we do reply, that's where we actually see it, right? So if we go down, just close this out here. It's not working on this page, but if I go here, we already implemented that. So the thing was, we didn't have any other pop-up, but now that we do, it makes sense to refactor this out. So what I want you to do is just delete this part out, and we're going to create ourselves a new file here. We're going to just call it pop-up CSS. And we'll go over to here, and I should have a pop-up CSS here. So we'll go ahead and grab that because I updated it quite a bit. One thing we did not implement before was the pop-up heading. So that's something that is new there. So we'll go ahead and just save that. We'll give this a refresh, and we'll open this up. And it's starting to get better. The reason why it's doing this is because it's sharing, I think, a similar name for the other pop-up field. So like if we go into our edit profile here, or sorry, where is it? Our profile form, and we go down below here. Oh, maybe it's because we're not importing this anywhere. That's probably the reason why it's not working. So where did I import it? Probably in the index or app.js because it's kind of a global one. So we go into app.js. Yeah, that's what I did. So we'll go ahead and grab that. We'll open up app.js. And we'll go to the top here. I'll paste that in. And we'll go ahead and save this. We'll refresh. There we go. Now it's working the way I want it to work. So the display name is showing up, which is great. Another thing that we coded in here was an off click here. So if you click on the outside, that will work. If you want to know how that works, if we go to the profile home, profile form here, JS, the way it's working is we have an on-click on the div, and that's like a fixed div that there's actually an invisible div that's all the way around here. And when it gets clicked, it checks the event target and makes sure that it matches this class. Because like if you click here, it will still trigger the data. See, like up here, it's triggering it, the close. So I'm clicking all over the place on different elements. And it's triggering it and showing it. But the idea is we only want it to be on that element because that's how we know that it's supposed to close. I'll go back over here, take out that close there. So that's how that works. So now we have the form up, and we do probably have to refactor some reply form CSS. We did do that. What did we do in the JS one here? We did add an on-click to the reply form as well because we didn't actually have that on there. So that's probably a good idea to do that now so we don't have to do it later. So I'll go over here and grab this on-click. It doesn't even look like I finished the implementation. No, we'll do this later. We'll know about it later. I'm not going to worry about it. We'll do it when we actually do the replies. So, yeah, that's in good shape. So edit form, message form. What happened here? Oh, nothing. We're just changing absolutes. So our form is there. Now we have to make it so it actually saves. So we need an endpoint. So we'll go to our app.py. And we need to implement a new endpoint. So we'll go ahead and grab this code here. We just reworked one from the like other ones nearby, so nothing that you don't already know. We'll go down below and put it somewhere. Yes, this file is really big, but that's just the nature of these Flask apps with this routing. Is there a nicer way to refactor this? I'm not sure, but we'll figure it out as we go. Okay, so here, the idea is that we have API profile updates. So that's the endpoint we're going to have. We're going to get the bio and display name. Bio can be blank, so we do have to set it to none or string or something like that. We need to be logged in, so we're obviously going to grab the access token. We've created this update profile, just like everything else. We create individual services for it. And we're going to pass the cognito user ID because we have to make sure that we are that user and we're logged in, the bio and the display name. So we'll go to the top and see if we actually have an import for that. So we do not yet. So we'll go and paste this in here. We'll say update profile because I believe that's what I named it. So if we go over here to the app.py, app.py, yeah, that's what I called it. So we'll bring in that import statement. Just make sure it's the same. Yeah, it's identical. And so in our services directory, we will need a new service. We'll say update profile.py, and then we'll go ahead and grab that code. So in here, we have an update profile here, and I'm just going to grab the contents here, and then we'll just read through it and make sure we both understand what's going on. So the idea here is that we have our run as per usual. There has to be a display name. So if there's not, throw an error. If there are any we don't need to have a bio, but if there are any errors, just return back the bio and display name for error handling. We are not doing error handling right now. We'll do that as cleanup work at some point in the bootcamp. so if there are no errors, then it's good to go ahead and write. So we have a function here called update profile. This is going to insert into the database. So we will commit that to the database. Once it's saved, we'll return the handle using the returning SQL functionality, and we'll pass it into our queries user short, which will get us back just the profile information. So that's pretty straightforward. So we'll go back over here, and we need in here our users update SQL, because that is what is going to update our profile. So we will go into DB SQL and we'll say users. We'll make a new file here and say update SQL. We'll paste it in. Okay, and so what we're doing here is we're passing the handle, or sorry, the Cognito user ID, and we will search by bio and display name, and then we'll return the handle because we want to reuse an existing SQL function. So in our update profile here, we end up using user short, which we defined before, and so it takes a handle, and that's why here we're doing that returns on the form, wherever that is. Yeah, why we have the returning handle. So that makes sense. One thing that we're going to find out is that there is no bio field. So if we attempt this, it will actually fail. It'll be like, hey, there's a field that doesn't exist. You didn't define the field. And so we need to add it to our database. And so what I did is I went on a tangent, because we could have just inserted it, but the idea is that at some point we need to have migrations. And so I created a generator that is similar to what you'd find in Ruby on Rails. There technically are migration tools. So like if you look up SQL Alchemy, this is an ORM. And so we could just use the ORM just for the migration functionality, or there's an extension for it. So we say migrations. There is a, maybe it's this one, a database migration tool. So it's a database migration tool written by the authors of SQL Alchemy. A migration tool offers functionality, so it can do a bunch of stuff. As far as I understood, you needed SQL Alchemy in order to use this, and I didn't want to do that. So if there was a way to use this without SQL Alchemy, then that might be fine. This is not exactly the one I was looking at, so maybe this actually is an isolate one. But for the purposes of our learning, I think we can just set up our own, because when you do use libraries like this, there's a lot going on in here, so you have to decide, does it really do what we need? Or can we get away with doing our own thing? So for the time being, yeah, it's part of this project. So basically you are stuck doing with whatever this one is. And so I just don't want to use ORMs. I want to avoid them as best we can. And also, every time you import a library, then those have dependencies, and then you're just kind of introducing more things that you have to secure. So the less, the better. So what we'll do is we will create a generator file. So in our bin directory, we have this new file called migration under generate. So we'll go here into our bin directory. Like, we're speeding through this. This was like hours, hours and hours of struggle. Generate, so we'll make a new generate folder, and in there we'll make a new file called migration. And then we'll go and copy the contents here of the migration, and I'll just walk you through what's going on here. So the way this file works is you want to specify a name, and the idea is that we want to have these files that are named like this. They're going to be some big number, which is actually a date time, and then followed by a name. And the idea is that if there's a migration, we will have a table in our database called information schema. And what that will do is it will store the last time or the last successful run. And we can use that as a reference point to know which migration files to run and which ones not to run, if that makes sense. But we'll go through here and just look at the file. So the idea is that we get that timestamp as that value, and that's going to print out that number thingy here. And then we want the name. So the name is inputted here as hello. It has to be underscore lowercase. It has to be that format. So make sure that that's what you call your file. So if it's whatever, it'd be like, add. I should actually give a better example like that. Add bio column, which is actually what we're going to do. And then the idea is it will use that lowercase one, and this one will turn it into title case. So convert the underscore name to title case, e.g. add bio column to add bio column. Okay, so that's all that's doing there. we are going to generate out a Python file. So what we do is we pass that class name there. So we have a unique class. We actually aren't extending. That was something that I was considering doing, but we didn't actually end up doing that. And this will generate out a migration file. In fact, I think this one is a little bit old. So I need to make sure I update this here so it generates out correctly. So this should be class, and this would be migration, class, migration. And so it'll generate out this file. And then we will place this file into the backend Flask DB migrations directory. It'll be named as such, and we'll write the file there. So the idea is that it's setting us up for that file. So in our DB directory, we'll make in our backend Flask, we'll make a new folder called migrations, sorry. And we'll put a keep file there. Keep files are there to keep directories around when you especially don't have any files in there. But that will work for the time being. I want to go check out the migration file to see if there's anything else I changed. There's also supposed to be this in this file here. I just want to make sure this works correctly. This removes leading and trailing new lines, because if we don't do this, then when we generate this file, it ends up having like a new line on the bottom and the top. Not a big deal, but I just don't like the look of it. Okay. And so I'll go back here, see if there's anything else that was useful that I could put in here. There is this line, so we'll put that in as well. Okay. So that looks like it's correct. So what we'll do is we'll just hit escape there. I'm going to write chmod u plus x. Oh, did we just stop our backend? Well, it doesn't really matter if we did, but we'll do bin generate migration. And so now we'll see if it works. So we'll do bin generate migration, and I'll just say add bio column, because that's what we're attempting to do here. And we'll hit enter. And so if we go up here, we now have generated out that file. It looks correct to me. I don't see any problems. Yeah, so that looks correct. There are a few trailing spaces there that are kind of bothering me. We'll just take that off. But for more or less, that seems to be working correctly. But the idea is that we generate the file and then we can populate it. Now we have a migrate and a rollback. Sometimes they call this an up and a down in other, like that's what they call them in Ruby or Rails. So we're just going to call it migrate and rollback, because the idea is you migrate forward, you roll back when you go back one step. And so the idea here is that we want to implement whatever that is. So if we go here, we want to add one, right? So we want to add the bio. And in the other case, we want to roll back. Okay. So now we need a way of actually triggering these files. So if we had a bunch of these files, they need to do something or work. So we have separate scripts for that. If we go into, on the left-hand side here, we have migrate and rollback in our DB. So we'll go ahead and make those folders. So we'll go into our bin. We'll say migrate and rollback. We'll say chmod u plus x bin db migrate rollback. And so now we have those two files. For the migrate here, I'm going to go over here and grab the code. This one was fun to write. It was quite the headache. So that is the migrate, and then we'll get to the rollback. And this is actually where I last left off, because I was just trying to make sure that this was working correctly. And if this gets working, then we can test our endpoint works, and then we've hit a significant checkpoint. We haven't done the avatar part where we're uploading to S3, but this will be pretty useful if we do get this working. So I'm just going to close out some of these tabs here, and so we can take a better look at what's going on here, because there's a lot of code. So the first thing is that we need to bring in libdb. So we're just importing that. We've done that before. That's so that we can run a couple things. The first thing is that we need to store the last successful run. We are storing it as a string value. So this does represent a date time, but it was just easier not to create a timestamp in Postgres and then have to figure out how to work with it. So I made it really simple. It doesn't really have to be zeros all the way across, but when we create this schema, it doesn't actually have any value in there. So what I'm going to do is go back over here, and in our schema.sql, we should have, or we need to have a new table. So this is the table that we're going to grab, and we're going to put that in our schema. Okay, whoops. schema SQL, and we'll go up here. And this one's a little bit different because this is something that we don't want to drop if it already exists because it's storing useful information for migrations. So we're doing create table if not exists. So only create it if it doesn't exist. Don't drop it if it already exists, just skip over it. And we have two things here, last successful run and last migration file. Right now, we actually never did last migration file. I thought that would be useful to say like what was the last thing that we were on, but I'm actually don't care about that now. So I'm just going to do that and have a single value. But anyway, now that we have that, we need to make sure that table exists. So we'll manually create it because it's already supposed to be created. So when we do our schema up, we'll have that next time. So I'll go ahead and hit enter here, and that will create our table. So now we can work with that. I'm going to leave this tab open because I found that I had to go in here quite a lot to work through stuff. So the way this works is we are selecting the last run. The problem with this query is what happens if there's nothing in here. Okay, we will just get an empty row back. And so we always want to return a default value. And so we decided that if there is no value, you've never put one in, that means you've never ran migrations. And this is going to compare these as numbers. So we want to return back a number. That's what we want to have. Or like a empty value. And so I just say if there is no record here, then like way coalesce works, it says return the first value that is not empty. So here this returns a null or whatever value, and so that's not there. It will return the string. Because this is a string, we have to return back a string. I can't make this a number. That's how Postgres works. When you have a column, you can't just give a different type here. And so the last successful run will be all these zeros. We could just store this as 0 here or this here, and it'd be the same thing. There's no reason to do that. I was just trying to match the syntax for no reason. So I'll just change that to 0 and it'll make a lot more sense. So we say, get me the last successful run. And the next thing we want to do is we want to load the migrations path into our pathing so that when we want to dynamically load the this file here, which we need to do, we can do so. Then we're using globs. So globs is a way to print out the contents of a directory and it returns a list or an array. And so what we do is we iterate through that. And from there, it would give us the full path name. So we have to get just the file name. And then we take the file name and we take off the extension. So now we just have the module name because when you import, you don't import with .py, right? You just import without the .py on the end there. And then what we're doing is we're matching this file here that we're importing. We're just getting this number part, right? So we use a regular expression to do that. And then once we have done that, we just call that file time because that's what it represents, the file time. And so we say, if the time is equal to or less than, if the last time we ran it is less than or equal to it, then that means we should run that migration. So we use this import lib import module. This is for loading dynamic modules. We can't just take import and put it down there. It will not like that. So this is a way of dynamically importing it. And what it's returning here, the mod, is this here. So down below here, we have this migration. And we call mod, well, it returns this whole thing as a mod, a module. That's when we say mod, not modulus, which is the math thing, but we go mod.migration, which is here, and then we can call migrate. And so it will run that, which will run that, right? And we'll print out that we're running it. We'll put the module name there. And then what we need to do is if it's successful, which this error handling is not that great. So really there should be like a try catch because if it fails, it really should kill out of this and not run the other ones. But the idea is that I'm relying that it will just fail. So I'm relying on a fail, but like if we did this a bit more properly, and we probably will adjust this as the bootcamp goes, we would do a try and a catch and do that properly. But anyway, the point is that from here we are running that migration, and then we generate out a new timestamp. That's that number thing. We do it in the other file as well, so that's how we do it. It makes it like a period, so we just take out the period, and I think after the period is what the microseconds are. And so we have that timestamp there, and then we update it with the last one, so that successfully updates it. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that works. The rollback is really similar. Okay, and that's the one I was trying to debug and get working, which it wasn't working as expected. But if we go into the rollback here, it's similar. So same stuff. You have the get last successful run set the last one here. This just says this. It should just be 0. And we are adding the migration files path there as well, the same way. We're iterating through it, but the key difference here is we're just looking for the last migration. So we have this if statement. There's probably a way to do like find or select, but I'm not great at Python and I was having a headache looking it up. So I just opted to iterate through the whole array or list. People that take computer science would not like the fact that I'm doing this, but I don't care because this isn't something we need to optimize as an algorithm. We just need it to work. So the idea is that if, as long as it has not been set, if like my last migration file is none, then go ahead and see if we can find it. And if the last successful run is greater than this time, then this one must be the last file that was ran based on this logic. And so then set it and then print it out. So here I was at the point where I was just trying to detect the last one because we only want to execute the last migration. When you do rollback, you roll back once. When you do migration, you run all the files. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll go up here and we will attempt to do a migration, and I just hope that it works. We do this, and we have an error here. We have this verbose option. So that's another thing that we added. It's because we have these here, and I just didn't want these to print out, so I added this third option. And so we have to update our db.py. So we'll go to our db.py here. And so all these have a new extra flag on here. So this is going to be in our db.py. And I'm not going to just copy this. We'll like have to, we're not just going to copy this wholesale. We're going to go and add each one. So what we want is this verbose statement on here. So we'll grab this and we're going to place this into the end of these query commit lines. So we'll go here and that will be one. And that will be one. Whoops. And then this will be one. And then this will be one. Okay, and so I believe those are the three that we needed. The other thing is that we just have to say if verbose. So if verbose, then do this, right? Similar thing here. It'll be these two lines though, because we're printing out 2 lines. And then it will be this one here. And I'm just going to double check that we got them all. So value object array. There's also commit. So I just missed this one up here. So we'll go up here. Verbose. Okay, so that way they won't be like flooding us with stuff that we don't need. I'll go back and hit up. We'll run it. And here it's saying this query commit does not exist in the migration file. I think it's just because our template is still not all the way up to date. So if we go back to our migrate file or our migration file in our gen, here it's just calling this. It's actually DB. Originally, I was going to like do something more fancy and extend from a file, or from another module, but we're going to keep it simple. We'll have to go up here and just make that small update. So this will actually be DB, and this will be DB. And so now what we can do is run migrate. And it is spitting out a little bit because I didn't put it on both. I wanted to see, I think, some of the output. But here it is running alter. Well, actually, we do want to see these because then we can see what it's doing. So we have alter table public users, add column bio text. That makes sense. What's interesting is it says running migration here. It actually should be above this statement, which is fine, whatever. And then down below, it's just setting the last run. So we can see that it actually is setting it. So that's good. I'm going to go back to this migration file or migrate file in our DB directory here. And what I want to do is just put on that additional flag so this one doesn't print. Because we know that that is working. The only other thing is, like, I don't know why this printed after unless we ran it. Oh, this is why. We'll put it up one. So now we'll actually print in order. Just put some of these here on there. And what we'll do here is we want to see if our rollback will work. So that was where I was running into trouble, where this wasn't working exactly as I expected. So let's see if this actually works. And so it's returning none. And so the thing is, I'm expecting it to return this because this is the last one that ran. And so there's something wrong with my code here that's having trouble. And it was on this match, I believe, where it didn't make any sense. So what I'm going to do here is just print out. I remember doing this quite a bit. We'll do a file time here. And I want last successful. I guess that would make sense. No, that actually is a value. Last successful run. One thing I saved you trouble from was watching me spell successful wrong. I spelled it with one S, and I spent like 20 minutes just fixing the namings. So that's kind of great that you don't have to sit through that. And so I'm just going to do this as a comparative. And so the idea is that we want to see if this works. Okay, so 0, this, false. So we're going down here and it says, is this value, the last successful run, larger than the file time? And it's saying no, which makes no sense because we definitely set that value up here. Let's go check our database. Say select. Well, we could just run this again. And it actually didn't set it. So here, it was supposed to commit it. So maybe that's the problem. It didn't actually commit the last one. Update schema information, set last full successful run. I think that's where I ran into issues. So let's see if we can manually update it. Update schema information, set this equal to 1. And we'll select it here. It's kind of annoying that it's not working correctly. I will just go ahead and grab this again. No data. Oh, we're not updating it. We are, we need to actually insert it. And so that's where I ran into trouble because we need to initially insert it. So that's what we actually need to do. Okay. So I was really tired and I was like really spending a lot of time here. So really it should actually never be null. So this whole query up here no longer makes sense because it should never actually be blank. So what we can do is just take this out like this. And simplify this query, which is actually quite nice. We'll go ahead and copy this over to our rollback. Paste that in. And we'll have to go back to our schema file here. And so in our schema file, what we need to do is we need to insert data only if it exists. So I'm just trying to think here because it really it matters about the seed data is what I'm thinking about. Because when you seed your data, you're supposed to have the migrations done already. You wouldn't do that prior. So I'm just trying to think whether like where to put this initial value, and I believe it's in here. So we'll say insert into schema information, and then we'll just say, I know it's like values. So we have values. I forgot what it is. So let's go over to our seed. Our seed SQL. Insert into, yeah, it is that, okay. And then here we'll do parentheses, and it's just gonna be the last successful run. Run values here, and this will be 0. That's all we want to do. But the thing is, we only want to do this once and never again. So there has to be a condition where only created if the record doesn't exist. So I'm going to go ask ChatGPT if they can save us some time here. Insert a new record into Postgres only if the record does not exist. Let's see if it can tell us. Oh, right, aware. That's pretty simple, actually. So I'm going to go grab part of that here, and I'm just going to paste it in. And so the idea is we'd say where, I'm going to say, I'm just going to do a count and say true. It's a small table, so it should be really fast for counting. Whoops. Schema information. Is equal to 0. Okay, because there should be no records, right? That's what we're looking for here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this manually, and hopefully that works. Semicolon. It doesn't like our where statement. Why? Oh, well, there is a select there. But we don't need to select another one. We just want to see if it exists. To insert a new record into Postgres database, only if the record does not already exist, you can use the insert into. We don't need to... And I wonder if we could just do a different value. Yeah, so here's just one. Okay, I think that's what we can do. So here, what we can do is just say select. 0 like that. And maybe that would work. I'm not really sure, but let's just see if that does work. We don't have to do parentheses around it, do we? Yeah, we don't. Take that out. Column 0 does not exist. Okay, just give me a second, I'll look it up. All right, so I haven't had a lot of luck there. It did say like we should use upsert instead, but the thing is that I think there's a simpler solution. I'm just going to put another field on here, which will just be like ID as text or integer. And so I think this will solve our problem. So I need to alter that table. So I'll say alter table public schema information here, and we'll say add column ID integer, and we'll just do that. And so now what we can do is we can just have that additional column. So now we can use our select. So we'll say 0 for that, and then we'll say select where I guess we could still use the upsert. So if we go back over to what I was just looking at, I know you didn't see it. I'm gonna go here, and there was something using upsert somewhere here. Insert on upsert. So I think we could do something like this, but that has to have like a uniqueness value on it as well. So I'm not sure about that. So we'll go down here, whoops. And I'm gonna go ahead and paste this in here. So we have like this insert into values here. I'm just gonna see if this is our solution. Because then what we can do is we can give it an ID that's always the same. So we'd say 0 here. So insert into public schema ID and this, and then I'll just go 1 and then 0 for values here. And then we can say on conflict ID do nothing. Okay. And so that's what I'm thinking, but we still have to have a uniqueness on there. I'm going to drop that table just because it's a little bit easier to do that. So I'm going to say drop table schema information. But you can see like not ChatGPT is not always helping us in the best way. Stack Overflow is still prime. But the idea is that we need to have a uniqueness. So I think it's just unique. Unique column Postgres. Just unique constraint, right? Where is it? Oh, right there. Okay, so it is what I thought it was. So we'll go here and just say unique, and then that way we won't have a problem. So we'll go ahead and create this table again. Hit enter. Probably need a comma on there. Maybe that's our problem. There we go. Create the table. Can we insert this record? 1 does not exist. Oh, because it's actually a number, so we'll go like that. I'll hit enter. Column 0 does not exist. Well, that's why we're inserting it here. Oh, maybe this is the data and those are the... No, that doesn't make sense. Insert into public schema these values on conflict. Column 0 does not exist. It's not a call to column that. Let's go back over here, take a look here. What's its problem? Do you see it? I sure don't. Insert into public schema. Let me play around with it and I'll be back in a second, okay? Oh, you know what it is? I think it's because I'm using double quotations. So I'm going to change this to single because you only use doubles when you're like talking about a column. So let's say you had like a weird name column like this, like this. That wouldn't be valid. So you'd use doubles to fix it when you're calling like schema information. But anyway, I'm going to just use singles and that'll probably fix our problems. Let's give this a go and hit enter. So it inserted the data. Let's go back and select. Select all from public or just schema information because public is the default one, so we don't have to keep writing that in there like that. Okay, so that looks good. Let's try to run this again and just make sure it's not inserting it twice. Okay, we'll select it again. It's not. Perfect. So that's what I want it to do. We'll go back over to here and we need to make sure that our rollback works. So we'll hit enter, see if it grabbed the last one. So we now have 0. It is 0, so that's correct. But we're still getting a false. Oh, right, because when we ran our migration, it didn't work the first time. So what we'll do is we'll just manually run that migration. So that's why we kept this open down here. And we'll just drop that column. Oh, we didn't actually say what we're dropping, so we'll just go and put bio in here. Great. So now the next thing is we'll go back and do a migration because it's as if it never ran. So we'll do this and run migrate. And so it's suggesting that this was timestamped that value. We'll double check, make sure that value is being set. It is, that's good. I don't know why it's still printing out the verbose here. We turned it, oh, it's because it's set to true. We'll turn this to false. Make sure there's a capital F there, and we will go back over to here, and we will try to do rollback. And now it's returning the correct one. So that means that it should successfully be able to do a rollback. So we'll go back over here. And the idea is that we have this module. We aren't loading it yet. So we'll go over here and grab these lines right here. Actually grab all these lines here. And I'm going to go down below. And we will paste this in here. Because the idea is we only want it to run once. And I guess we could do it here. We could also run it here. So what I'm going to do is just say if last migration is still none, or not none, we'll run it. We'll just make it a little bit more clear. Take it out of this if loop because there's already a lot going on in there, eh? Or actually, can we even do that because we need the full name of it? Let's see here. Module name. Do we use the module name anywhere else? We do use it there. Maybe what we could do is, do we use file name anywhere here? No, no. Do we use the file name? Okay, I guess maybe we should just place it there and make it simple. I was thinking it'd be easier if we did not do that, but we'll just place it here, I suppose. And rolling back. And so we have our mod, which we had last time. That makes sense. We are going to want to print that out. We're going to want to run rollback instead. And the question really was where should the timestamp go? I think the timestamp should just be the last one for the file. Like here it's setting it, but that's not what we want. We want to actually set it to the last one because we said in the other one, as long as it's the same time or less, that it will run in the other case. So this might backfire on us later, but I guess we'll find out. We don't really need to return anything here, so we can just take that out. And I think that's right. So what we'll do is go ahead and run this and see if it works. Roll back. We do have an error here, so let's go take a look. Sorry. Oh, one thing is that we probably need to update our record here. So like, you know how we're doing this? I guess it would update all of them, which is totally fine, but we could be explicit and we could just say where ID equals 1 and just be even more explicit about that. Not that it's going to hurt anything. But let's try to figure out what error we're having here. So it says query missing parameter last successful let. It has a spelling mistake. So that is what I was talking about earlier when I shot the video the first time. I had a ton of spelling mistakes. Where is that though? So we'll just start typing it wrong. There it is up there. So it's right here that the problem is. And so it probably did roll back, but our value is probably messed up. So let's go to our database and take a look at what the value is here. So it's still that value. Let's go describe our schema. So I think it's D users. And notice that that bio column's gone. So what we're going to do is just update schema information set value to last successful run equal to 0. We'll hit enter, and then we will go and select the information. So it's 0. So now we can run our migration normally. So we'll do a migrate. That is great. And then we'll do we'll see if that column is there. So we'll describe it. Yeah, it's there. And then we can do a rollback. And then it is gone, I think. Oops, over here. It is great. So now we've implemented migrations. You know, a library like SQL Alchemy might be doing a lot of other stuff for you, but it's really not that hard once you learn how to write your own transactions in SQL. And by the way, like this one line here actually does wrap it in transaction. If you want to do more transactions, it's something like begin, and then there's like end or something like that. Let's just take a look at what transactions look like. PSQL transactions. We'll go over here. And so what you can see here is this begin and commit. So this already happens for a single like upsert or insert thing. But what you can do is you can have breakpoints. So you can save them along the way. So when you're doing more complex things, if we run into that scenario, we'll do that. The reason we made these Python files is just because we want to be able to also programmatically work with data. So it's just a lot easier if it's Python instead of these being bash scripts or things like that. But yeah, that's a pretty big achievement. Now the question is, will our endpoint work? Do we have that bio in there? So I'm going to go here, and it's still not there because we have to go back and migrate. Isn't that cool? We wrote our own migration library. Anyway, so what we'll do is we'll go back to our CRUD application. If it is working, let's go make sure that it is running. Refresh here. I believe it is. Yeah, even though that is squared, there's probably another one running there. Yep, they're all green. So we'll go back and we will refresh and make sure our page is still working. It is good. We'll go to our profile. We'll click the edit button and we'll say, we'll give this an exclamation mark. We'll say, I like to teach cloud. Okay, we'll hit save. Now this didn't close or anything, but we might be running into an error. So what I want to do is go to the backend. Even if there isn't an error here yet, we'll just open it up anyway because we're going to have to go check out the logs. And I'm going to go into Backend Flask. I'm also just going to double check our time because I do meet one of our guest instructors soon, so I don't want to miss that. DB object has no attribute called query select object. So it looks like we might have written a mistake here. There's nothing called query select object, so there's clearly a mistake in some of our code. That is going to be in the user profile. Profile here. It looks like it did update it. Update profile, I think we called it. There it is. And so it's here. It's just going to be query object. It's not query select object. So it probably did work. I'm going to just hit save again. And if we go up here and go to our network tab, we still are getting a 500 error. Now, what doesn't it like? DB object has no thing called query object. Am I just naming things wrong here? Did I forget like the name of our stuff? Query commit. Oh, right. It's query object JSON to indicate that it's returning back JSON, which actually it's not. It's returning back a dictionary. But, that's my fault. So we'll go back and hit save. And still getting a 500 error. Now what doesn't it like? Name model is not defined, so what line is it complaining on? Line 308 on app.py. Is that really where our problem is? It looks like this model error is not none stuff. I think it might be happening in the app.py. Yeah, it might be happening in there. So let's go take a look there. And, well, we're not returning anything, so that's going to cause that problem there. We'll go back, hit save again. It's saved. Didn't update anything yet. That's our next step, but let's go refresh and see if it propagated. It did. We're not showing the bio anywhere. We probably should. How does Twitter do it? Let's go here and see if I can find my Twitter. I'm just trying to find it. So if we go over here. And yes, I am a little bit sick. You can't tell based on my voice, but my throat is not doing great, and I am a bit feverish, but I did take Advil and Tylenol, so I have to get these things done no matter what, so I will always push through it. But up here, we have our bio right here. So that's where I want mine to sit. So we'll go back over here, and we will go render that out. That is in our profile heading, so we'll go profile heading here. And this is going to be right under here. So we have this and then the pop-up button. So from a design perspective, like this is basically one element, and so this goes underneath. So we want to actually place this under our ID, and I'll just say div class bio. And then we want to have props profile bio, assuming we're even returning that. And it actually goes below info. So it's going to go right there. And then we'll open up our CSS for this. Can we like click through to files if we hold control? I haven't been doing that at all. Oh, why haven't we been doing this the entire time? If you hold control or command on the keyboard and click on it, then you get to it a lot faster. I like that. I just wish there was an easier way to get back to the original file, but I suppose it just opened adjacent to it, so it's not that big of a deal. We'll go down below. We'll do profile heading. We'll do bio. I assume it needs like some padding. We probably put it on the info. Did we? We did. So we did a padding 16 there. And I need this to be somewhat readable, so I'll just choose this for now. I don't know if that's going to be too light. Yeah, it looks like what Twitter does is looking off screen there. We'll go back over here. We'll make sure that endpoint actually returns a bio. That is in our users show SQL, I believe. Same file. Yeah, it's the same file. And so we'll just do bio here, users bio. Okay. And we'll go back over here, give this a refresh. We should see the bio now. We do. The spacing is okay there, I suppose. I think that's all right. Anyway, so we have that, but it doesn't update in real time. So what we have to do for that is go back over to our, let me think about this. Because the data is like one level up, right, for our profile. So I don't know. I think this is fine for now. I realize that, it's not perfect, but it is updating the endpoint. I'd rather focus on the cloud right now and then push to this stuff later on. So I'm going to say this is done. So implement migrations, implement the profile page, implement the endpoint to update profile. But it still doesn't have, yeah, I know I spelled implement wrong there, but nobody grades me, so it's okay. But we still don't have client-side S3 bucket upload. So that is basically the next thing. The idea is that we need to upload to S3 into our folder, and then that will spit back out the stuff that we want. And we still need to indicate that we actually have an avatar. We could try to attempt to look it up, but that's kind of annoying because we don't want to hit the database if we don't have to. Now, I don't know what Twitter does for that. Maybe they return a flag whether you have a custom avatar or not. That, or maybe there is a way for us to hit CloudFront and serve up a default one, because we could in CloudFront technically write a Lambda that will, if the cache is missed, it will just serve up another file. And that's actually probably what we should do now that I'm thinking about it. And that might be interesting to implement. So anyway, the next step really is to, you know, do whatever's next, which is the client-side bucket upload. I know I've done that somewhere, so I'll have to find that code and then we'll integrate that. But I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.